coached at a high academic school for a very, very long time. That is a very, very common practice for a lot of coaches if they have access to it. Basically, a pre-read is the college coach acting as a liaison between your family, your student athlete, and the admissions department. So in most cases, they're going to ask for test scores and grades. What coaches are going to need is an unofficial transcript. That is something that you can link to your NCSA profile. Coaches can download that, send that to their admissions and financial aid department to give you a pre-read. In a lot of cases for college coaches, those are limited spots. I'll speak from personal experience here. I was doing that early on in a senior year. I typically had anywhere between 12, maybe 10 to 12, maybe 15 in a certain given year, depending on what we were graduating. Again, I had to bargain that with the athletic director and admissions. So I had a certain number of spots. I was only willing to do that for a certain number of athletes that I felt most comfortable with. Those are athletes that were well communicated in advance. Those were athletes that I knew were pretty serious about possibly being a part of my program and wanting to come to school there. And that was something, an additional step that I could take as a college coach. It was a courtesy extended to us by the admissions department to say, hey, we're going to give you some insight as to whether or not these student athletes will be admitted to the school. In some cases, they put certain caveats on that. So they need to go early decision one, where they're a little bit more lenient in order to be accepted. But if they go early decision one, they'll get in. Sometimes they say, hey, they need, this athlete in order to be accepted for early decision one needs to have a 1400 on the SAT. Slightly rare that an admissions department would be that specific and hold themselves accountable that way. They don't want to do that necessarily, but a pre-read is something that a coach can help you with. It typically happens in most cases in October, but college coaches will start to build that pre-read list probably by about August. Right. So if you're working with a high academic school, that coach may or may not have told you about that, but that could be an option for you. If you haven't communicated interest to that coach, if you haven't visited, you need to show some kind of good faith that you're really interested in that school and want to apply and want to be a part of that program. Then the college coach can go to work for you. So great question, Patrice. It's something that isn't really public knowledge. It's something that you clearly have kind of gone through the process and learned from a college coach. Might be an option at a lot of really high academic Division III schools, but you need to show also some at least early level of commitment to that program in order for the college coach to be able to do that for you.
Yeah,
Kyle, you learned something there?
Yeah, no, and I just didn't know that was the name for that. I had never heard that.
Well, what did you know it as?
The coach vies for you. I didn't know there was an actual name for it. But to kind of build off of that, a lot of people have a misconception that I'm going to use sports to help myself get into a good school, which does happen, but it happens to, like Danny said, to a very select few that those coaches are very serious about recruiting to the program. It's not everybody that, like, I'm going to get into Harvard by using sports. It does happen for some people, but it's going to be select few. So don't necessarily count on just because you play a sport and you have decent grades, you're going to be able to get that extra roster spot.
Well, and here's the other thing that I'll say about it. We actually had something similar at the Division I level. Where I was at Iona College, we weren't fully funded. And what that means is that we didn't have the full amount of scholarships that the NCAA would allow us. So we maybe had half of that. What we were relying on in those cases was an athlete's ability to earn money from the school. So they would get merit money based on good grades and good test scores. In some cases, that was coming out to a third, half, even more of a tuition credit that athlete never had to pay back, right? So for me as a coach, if a student athlete has good grades and good test scores, I can get them some money from the school and not have to come so much out of my pocket, my athletic budget to be able to do that. Pre-read in that regard, and we were doing this for every athlete I was serious about, I had a liaison in financial aid in the admissions department where I would send them unofficial transcripts and test scores if we had them. About a week later, they would spit back a number, say, hey, this athlete's probably eligible for X number of dollars in tuition credits. So that was really big for me as a coach, at a program that was not fully funded. I was using NCSA to search for athletes that were academically eligible for some of that money. In a lot of cases, those athletes were earning way more money from the school than I could ever give them out of my athletic budget. So That's what that would mean at some of your upper levels when it comes to scholarship.